Let's move on to the next spot on the board, and we head back to America. 1 p.m. Eastern. Houston Texans 4-4, 1-3 on the road. At Cincinnati Bengals 5-3, 3-1 at home. We're at Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati, Ohio. A lot of us that are still involved in our survivor pools are, I'll speak for myself. I'm trying to save the Cowboys for next week. And it's a risky thing to do. And it's a risky thing here to, take the Bengals and in the survivor pool and go up against, CJ Stroud after a 5-touchdown, 470-yard performance. I get it. But I'm trying to convince myself to do that and, deal with the consequences, because then next week, a lot of people will have trouble and I won't. But you have to be alive for next week. And I don't know if I will be. We were all on the Bengals over the Bills. We were all on the Bengals over the 49ers. I got in on the Bengals to win the AFC at 9-1 before kickoff. It's now 5.5-1. I got in on the Bengals to win the Super Bowl at 16-1. I didn't check what that was at this morning. I just wanted to know what the AFC was. Look, I'm in. I'm in on the Bengals, but I don't necessarily want them here, and I wouldn't want them at this point range with his quarterback as confident as he is. Now, this could be a huge wake-up call situation for a CJ Stroud. We talk about selling high and buying low. I certainly don't want anything to do with buying on the Texans here, and I don't want anything to do with buying on the Bengals here this week, although I'm a huge believer in them long-term. Let's get into the line history here for this one. And again, it's the survivor spot that I'm looking at the closest. Pinnacle's hanging a 6.5. It's not a real 6.5, although it did open as a real 6.5, minus 106 on each side. And then it moved to minus 123 now for the Bengals. And we see sevens across the board. From a total scenario, we're sitting here at a 48. This opened up at 46.5. It's climbed a 1.5 to 48. From a cash flow standpoint here, we have... Get over to this spot here. We have 26% of the tickets and 40% of the cash on the Texans, and the line's sort of moving away from them, as after the game Sunday, that line, the Pinnacle line. 65% of the tickets, 82% of cash, and we've watched it climb up. Al Cervix said, Jimmy, Houston lost on the road to Charlotte and Atlanta and struggled to score. Yes, we know the difficulty of playing on the road, and we saw it from Will Levis, and Will Levis is on the road again this week. It's difficult for these young quarterbacks. It's difficult for any quarterback to go out on the road and succeed. 52 Fahrenheit, partly cloudy, 6 miles per hour. Houston comes in off a wild 39-37 victory that saw Stroud throw for 5 touchdowns, rookie record 470 yards. Texans finished with 496 total yards. Everything was going for them. Noah Brown caught 6 for 153 and a touchdown. Tank Dell caught 6 for 114 and 2 touchdowns. Dalton Schultz caught 10 for 130 and a touchdown. They struggled to run the ball. Damian Pierce hurt. Singletary did not look good. 13 carries for just 26 yards. They struggled on third down, 3 for 11. And that's unusual for this Texans offense. They're 8th in the league on third down, converting 42.3% of the time. They went 3 of 4 in the red zone. This is a situation where CJ is showing great gains. They're just 24th on the season, scoring touchdowns 48.2% of the time. But over the last 3 games, they're 8th in the league, scoring touchdowns 70% of the time. And the game became more complicated when the Texans lost their kicker, Kaimi Fairbairn, to a quad injury.
It became easier for him after they lost their kicker. I was like, Jesus, I thought it was all rosy daisy after he went out.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't have been. Dare Ogunbowale, that 29-yard field goal. He's the first non-kicker or punter to make a field goal since Wes Welker did October 10, 2004 for the Dolphins against New England. He handled the kickoff duties in the second half. It's fun for a team to have these role players stepping up, and they're an excited group here. And it could be a huge wake-up call going over to Paycor. Fairbairn is questionable this week. The defense couldn't get any red zone stops against the very pedestrian Bucs offense. They allowed the Bucs to go 4-5 in the red zone. They're usually much better there. They're 14th in the league, allowing touchdowns 51.7% of the time. They finished with 2 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, and they're dealing with a ton of injuries right now. Safety MJ Stewart injured his shoulder. He's listed as questionable. Defensive tackle Hassan Ridgeway left in third with an ankle injury. He's out. Linebacker Jake Hansen hurt his hand in the third. He's listed as questionable. Wide receiver John Mechie left in the second half with a rib injury. He's questionable. Safety Jimmy Ward injured his hamstring. So, he's listed as questionable right now. But that's, MJ Stewart and Jimmy Ward And that's a problem if they're not there. And then Robert Woods and Damian Pierce, who missed last week's game, are they're still listed as questionable. Bengals coming off their fourth straight win, an impressive 24-18 victory at home over the Bills. They're making us a lot of money. Burrow, 31-44 for 348 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They were 8-15 on third down, 2 of 3 in the red zone. T. Higgins caught 8 for 110. Tyler Boyd caught 3 for 56. Jamar Chase caught 4 for 41. He injured his back making a catch. I've listened to him, interviewed. I tried to get as much information as I could, and I think he's going to play this week. That's what I think from him. I think he's going to play. We know they have huge games coming up, divisional games, but I think from listening to him talk that he will play. See if that blows up my face, but I don't see how it could unless, the only thing I'm looking at doing is taking Cincinnati in Survivor. Mixon continues to struggle on the ground, 14 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown. This is a big problem. Cincinnati's last in the league, rushing for just 75.9 yards per game. The defense didn't get a ton of pressure on Josh Allen, but looked very good throughout. The Bills are tied with the Eagles as the best third down offense in the league, and they went 7-12 against the Bengals. But the Bengals bent but didn't break. Taylor Britt had another big game. They finished with a sack and 5 quarterback hits. And I just believe in this team completely and totally and expect them to put me in a nice money-making situation come playoff time. Take it away for us here, Troy. Texans, Bengals at Paycor.
So I faded the Texans successfully this past week, but it definitely wasn't pretty. Definitely felt a little bit lucky, but at the same time, I felt a little unlucky too with that 40-second drive and just how bad the Tampa Bay Bucs were in the red zone. I mean, 4th and goal from the 9. I mean, it just looked like pitch and catch, no problem for C.J. Stroud and the Texans to put up points. I mean, all I could say about this kid is I just can't believe it. I mean, it's just wow what this kid's fucking doing. I mean, 470 yards, 5 different players caught touchdowns, man. I mean, this guy's peppering the ball all over the field. I mean, a lot of these were deep strikes. I mean, this ain't dink and dunk football. This guy's throwing the ball downfield. He's driving it downfield. I mean, it's really impressive. But we talked about regression from that Bucs defense a little bit, being first in red zone, but last in third down defense. We talked a little bit about that last week, and I think there's something to that. So maybe put a little bit too much eggs in that basket. And, maybe I got to reconsider how that's built into my model a little bit, especially early in the season. But the issue is the Texans gave up 37 points to the Bucs. Rachaad White had some running lanes, and the Bucs are terrible on the ground. Baker was efficient, making big plays down the field. And for the second straight week, we cashed with the Bengals, making a crap load of money with this team. And it's such a beautiful thing. It's so predictable at this point what happens with the Bengals early in the season. And when they flip that switch, which they really do flip that switch, in this case, it was, I guess, Joe Burrow's injury is what had to be overcome for this team to be headed in the right direction. But there's one thing's for sure. I'm not deboarding this Bengals train at this point. I didn't do it last year, and it paid out. I don't think they lost at home last year after week 2 or week 3. They just continued to win and cover. I don't think they lost it after week. They didn't lose games at all last year, damn near. I think they covered like every spread after week 8. They went on a huge winning streak. I mean, it's just something I'm not in the business of doing. So what I did do is I teased the Bengals with a game we're going to talk about later in the Chargers. I got the Chargers up to 7.5. I got the butt end of the line move. I can get to 8.5 if I teased it now, which I would love a lot more. My plan went a little sour in that case, but I got the Bengals down to -1. And I think the Bengals are perfect. They make the perfect teaser leg, in my opinion. They're 9-1 since they're 9-1 straight up since 2021. The line is between -3 and -8.5. They're 5-1 on a teaser when favored between 6 and 8.5. And their only losses in week 1 of last year. We already talked about the early to late dichotomy with this Bengals team and with Joe Burrow. Only loss was in week 1 of the Steelers last year. Home favorites that open between -6, and this talks about the entire market, right? All the NFL teams. Home favorites that open between 6 and 8, and market does not move towards the road team, which it is in this case, I believe. So that's kind of invalidated at this point because this has dropped at Pinnacle. Has it or has it not? It has not. Home favorites that open and close between the 6 and 8, and the market doesn't move towards the road team, so the spread does not move towards the away team. 16-1 on a teaser the past 2 seasons. We know we need it on a teaser. We need a 75% probability to break even at -120. You got to find those -120 teasers, or you're making unprofitable bets. But yeah, I'm on the Bengals with a teaser, and I wish I had more options to tease them with.
Well, after this, I feel like I should take the risk, move forward with the Bengals this week, and then have the Cowboys for next week. When you get too cute in Survivor pools, you're no longer in Survivor pools. We'll see how it bangs out. But Troy is locked in with a teaser starting with the Bengals -1, and we will talk about the second leg of it here shortly.